and welcome. I am Eric Johnson, Karen's younger son, brother of Kent. Kent and I want to thank you for taking the time from your busy days for being here, and I personally want to express my gratitude to each of you. Many of my contemporaries from Schenectady, I have been away from Schenectady for a long time. But as my mom's illness advanced, I took a break from my work modernizing the electrical grid in the western United States to spend more time with her. What a blessing that time has been. I learned so many new things from Karen. I was amazed that she never once complained about her illness and constantly stayed positive and in good spirits. She loved you, and you clearly love her. As a bonus, it has been so heartwarming to see how vibrant Schenectady has become. It is also positive. Thank you for allowing Karen to thrive and to contribute to this amazing community over her many years. This celebration focuses on Karen, but I view it as a celebration of the entire community. All you, contributors and community members who have worked to make a difference, a real difference, through your civic and community action. My hope is that this celebration contributes to the positive trajectory of the great city of Schenectady. In fact, today's event was inspired by Karen's own words and instructions that she gave in anticipation of her death. She didn't want mourning or sadness. She didn't want a traditional service. She wanted a celebration of her life. She wanted a celebration of her communities. She wanted to bring people together, perhaps for closure, but more importantly, to celebrate and to be inspired forward together. She asked for jazz music. She specified Proctors Theater. And she advised us to get help from Matt Cutler and Philip Morris to create a celebration event. As always, she left a lot of the details open and trusted that we would fill them in. Matt and Philip and a whole other cast of characters have helped so much to make this celebration event become a reality. We thank all of you for your help. Mom, we've done our best to fill in the details of the celebration, so let's get to it. I am pleased to introduce our MCs for today, Rabbi Matt Cutler, Senior Rabbi, Congregation Gates of Heaven, and Philip Morris, CEO of Proctors Theater and the Rep.
Welcome and thank you all for coming today, a very special day for a very special person.
Wow, this is just absolutely amazing. I'm not sure how this lectern is placed here because this is the perfect spot Karen would want. You know, it's not center stage and it's off to the side, and that's how Karen danced. She knew when she had to be in the center of everything, and she knew when to stood to the side and just let other people shine. Karen was an amazing soul, and our job today is huge because, well, how can you capture the essence of Karen in a few short minutes? How do you talk about the job and the love and the passion and the excitement that she has for this place, this city, and for all of us? No, it's not easy. So Philip, what would you say to describe Karen in a word?
I don't have one word, but I'll share some with you.
All right.
She was smart.
Oh, yeah.
She was sensitive listener. Not just that, she heard.
I love the fact that she had the keenest eye for detail, that when she put herself into a project, she knew exactly what it was supposed to be.
And she was the messiest person I knew.
Oh, yeah. That trunk of her car, you know, it was a symbol.
Or poor Eric and Kent when they tried to clean her house.
But you know what I also really loved about her is the way that she prodded. She had this ability to gently chastise me into motivating me into doing things.
Well, it was a look, right?
Oh,
She
yeah.
had a look. So I suppose one word would be the Karen look. One eye down, one eye up.
And then there was the Karen look in which she would beam back and she would smile, this big grin, as if she says, I know what you're doing and you got my seal of approval. Those were the Karen looks. You know, it was said beautifully this morning. This morning at Music Haven, they dedicated a brick with Karen's name on it, and the inscription was simple. Karen B. Johnson, who got things done. Yup, that's Karen. So let's go to the video and see who she was.
I had just moved to Schenectady right out of college for my first job, and I was living across the street from her on Union Street in the Stockade. It was winter. My car got stuck in the driveway and across from my apartment, and as I was trying to figure out how to get out, a woman came down the driveway, surveyed the situation, and said she was the mayor. It was great because Karen went back up the driveway, she grabbed some cardboard, shoved it under the tires, and then she told me, you get in the car, rev the gas, I'll go in the back and I'll push the car out. And that's exactly what happened. We coordinated, got my car out, and it was then that I really realized for the first time that Karen Johnson was not only a down-to-earth and genuine person, but she really knew how to get things done.
In that era, when we were in the beginning of the 80s, there wasn't a lot of presence, women's presence in the workplace or in politics. So my first impression was that this woman is a trailblazer, that she's just gonna break boundaries, and she did.
Perhaps one of the most important things about honoring Karen's legacy would be to recognize that engagement is critical. Everything that you do, every action that you take matters. You may not be solving everything in 24 hours, and sometimes we live in a very impatient world where we want to be able to do that. But imagine if she had taken that perspective when Proctors Theater almost was destroyed, you know, and look at where we are today. And I think that's a take-home message. A, not to be afraid, but also to just take action and don't wait for the person next to you to do it. Just get up and do it.
So one time I was with her and we were going to some event at the county or something, but she had 2 stops to make first. And she opened the trunk at the first location, and her trunk, I was shocked, was packed. On the left-hand side were political signs. At the top, there were packages of foods that she was delivering to people that she knew. And underneath that was the thing that she was delivering for this fundraising event. Next to that was a bag of games that she used, outdoor games that she used for some other event. So her trunk represented her life, like her house represented her life. It was stuffed to the brim.
She would gather stuff and serve as a transport. If I had a legacy that I wanted to inherit from her, is be one who transports, who takes the ideas from one place, bring them to a fruition in another. Someone who has creativity, ingenuity to partner to make a difference.
I think it's that strength, that ability to control your destiny, to make your community better, that's really a positive thing.
When Eric and Kent first approached Matt and me to speak about how this might work, the complexity of thinking about the number of people touched sort of overwhelmed us. And with that, the strategy emerged to invite a company to help build some media that involved some and many of the people that Karen influenced and that influenced her. So our program today will be 4 of these. This was number 1. And very little of us. So with that, Karen and her relationships, a video.
Born in Buffalo and raised in Cleveland, Karen Brown Johnson attended Radcliffe College. In 1967, Karen came to Schenectady with her husband to start a new life when he was hired by General Electric. Soon after their arrival, Kent and Eric were born, and Karen began her life as a supportive and engaged mother, committed to raising independent children who would grow to share her values. As her sons started their own families, Karen was the kind of grandmother who would bring humor to her conversations with her 3 grandsons, reveling in their adventures. Karen's life included many friendships that lasted decades, whether formed in her breakfast club, the Stockade Investment Club, her book club, or in the community. These relationships provided support, joy, and meaning to her life.
Karen called me one day and said, I'm taking the boys to Great Escape. Would you like to come along and bring the girls? I said, I have something that I have to go to, so I can't. She said, well, I'll come and pick up the girls and take them. She went to Great Escape with 5 kids for the day and thought nothing of it, which I think sets a lot of context to kind of Karen's approach to all that she does. She never saw the barriers to do things. She always saw the possibilities.
I remember on many of our Christmas trips when we'd go on vacations, she would always be the organizer of fun kid and cousin activities. And those are my strongest childhood memories of her. I'm so grateful for all the strong relationships that we've all forged as cousins, and I feel that Karen was so instrumental in driving those regular family gatherings.
I talk to my kids about how they think about their grandmother. She had this very light and funny and quirky side, and she liked seeing that in our kids. I mean, she really delighted in the silly things they would do.
Certainly I learned to listen fully to people, to not be judgy about where people were coming from, and to really try to get their perspective on things. I think she did that very well, and it sort of rubbed off on me.
Karen continues to teach me lessons. I've learned things that Karen never said out loud. Just what a wonderful mom she was, because she's produced 2 fabulous men as sons.
I didn't know Karen really as a community person. The things that she did for the community, she just talked about some things in general, but mostly I heard about them through the newspapers. I didn't know about most of the stuff that she did. For me, she was just a friend across the table.
We've been in a women's investment group together that Karen really had a hand in starting. I love thinking back and thinking of all the times that I could just look over the table at her. She'd be smiling or laughing, and it's almost like sharing a private joke with her. So I loved that.
With Mike Delarocco, Karen enjoyed a unique 3-decade partnership that made both of their lives richer.
When I first met Mike Delarocco, there were a few things I learned about him. He was the head of the Conservative Party. He led a group that picketed my house when I was a young child. I did wonder, is this kind of an odd couple? How is this going to work out, Mike and my mom? Over time, I learned they shared so much in values. They enjoyed doing so many projects. They enjoyed spending time together in the garden, having meals. It really turned out to be a wonderful relationship, and I'm grateful for the importance and for the quality of that relationship in my mom's life.
My father and Karen were pretty much constant companions for over 30 years. They attended many political dinners and other events, but also I think they had a relationship where at the end of the day, they could enjoy a quiet dinner together, just the 2 of them, and get out of the other arena for a while.
I'm so grateful for Mike and their caring companionship and love, and for his family.
They would laugh and have a good time together, and it was a great relationship.
Karen grew up in a family deeply committed to children and education. Her grandparents started Highlights for Children when Karen was just 4 years old. Growing up in the Highlights family shaped her values and attitudes. Karen, in turn, contributed greatly to the family business, serving on the board of Highlights and bringing her effective leadership style to the family enterprise.
Seeing her in our family, she was not the out front leader. She was the quiet leader who was very consistent and knew what was happening and pushing on her ideals.
Our family is very idealistic about the idea of serving children, creating fun with a purpose, making sure that kids can be the best kids they can be. And you know, we've grown up with that, and that was how we were treated by our grandparents and our parents. And it's just, I think, there's a legacy here that is so fantastic and so strong.
When I was a young teenager, sometimes adults would ask me, what is it like growing up the son of the mayor of Schenectady? At the time, it struck me as a particularly weird question, one that I just didn't have any simple or good answer for. Today, the deeper and more appropriate question might be, what was it like to grow up the son of Karen Johnson? After all these years, I still can't answer that in a soundbite. But I want to tell you today how I feel about it in just 2 words. I feel proud of her positive impact, of her values, of her commitment to her community, and I feel lucky, just lucky to have had her as a mother. I want to share with you a recent conversation I had with her when she was talking to me about the short time she had left. She said she just couldn't be too sad about it and that she hoped we wouldn't be sad. She expressed wonder at all the things she'd been able to do in her life, all the people she knew, all the things she got to be involved with. She said as a child, she never would have expected to have such a full life. She said, I'm truly lucky that my life has been so positive, so rewarding, filled with such meaningful things. That attitude that she expressed encourages me today, and I hope it encourages you to celebrate. Though she was a trailblazer in many ways, including being a working mother in what was then a traditionally male arena, Karen wasn't ahead of her time in spending a lot of time thinking about things like how to have a work-life balance. She didn't spend a lot of time figuring out or thinking about if she could have it all across all her roles. Instead, she was just all in whatever she was doing, truly engaged in whatever was in front of her. She showed up whatever the role, whether it was being the instigator of fun and the builder of relationships in our extended family, or as a young mom going on adventures with our friends, or laughing on the floor with her grandkids. She was engaged. Here's an early story I remember. It comes from the harshness of the Schenectady winters. I was young. I might have been in 1st or 2nd grade, and I'd grown accustomed to helping out shoveling the snow. So on a particular afternoon, I grabbed the shovel and I went out to the front walk. And rather than freshly fallen snow, I encountered snow and ice. And for a long time as a little boy, I sit there trying to break up the ice, trying to achieve my goal and clear the sidewalk. And as it was getting colder and colder, I had to come to grips with the fact that I was going to fail at this task. So with tears in my eyes, cold to the bone, with my little fingers pink inside my mitts, and having deep feelings of frustration and failure, I trudged back up to the front door to admit my defeat to my mom. I recall my mom picking me up, calmly brushing me off. She's always calm, wiping away the tears, expressing appreciation for my effort. And then she said something like, maybe tomorrow it'll be a little warmer. The conditions will be different. You can go back out and you'll be able to get it done. I don't exactly remember what happened the next day, but the story for me is an example of her approach and how she tried to impart certain values to us. Effort matters. If you fail, try not to get frustrated about it, because what's your frustration going to do? Look at what might change about the conditions or your approach and try again tomorrow. Just keep going and do the work. Another less traumatic story also comes from the winter. As a youngster, I was a paperboy here in Schenectady for the Schenectady Gazette and also the Sunday Times Union. And so there was a winter where my Sunday route had expanded. It had gotten huge. And it was going to be a snowy weekend. I can't remember if it was her idea or my idea, but we figured if we took all these big Sunday papers and loaded them in the back of the station wagon, and she would drive and I would hop on and off, probably not very safe, but hop on and off and run the papers to the door, we could probably make quick work of it. So the next day we tried it as an experiment, and we finished the route in about an hour. Well, it probably would have taken me 3 if I'd been walking. And so with the extra time, we headed up to Brandywine Diner for a mother-son breakfast when the rest of the house was still asleep. So what I thought would be temporary, what was meant as an experiment, that became our routine for the next couple years. We'd get up, we'd deliver the papers, and we'd go for breakfast. I thought she was just doing me a favor on my route. But I've realized later that the gift of those mother-son breakfasts one-on-one were really what she was after. As a parent, Karen fostered independence in us. Her coaching was sometimes subtle. Her hands-off approach provided us opportunities to make mistakes and learn from them, and she often withheld direct advice. Instead, she offered a leading question and a quiet confidence in our ability to make good decisions. About 15 years ago, I faced one of the biggest decisions of my adult life. I was considering a career change, a life change, to move to Columbus, Ohio, and take a job at Highlights. I was really curious about what her reaction would be. How would she feel? I wanted to know her advice. And you have to understand that Karen loved Highlights. Her feelings for the family and the company were both strong and deeply held. I wondered what she would feel. What would she say? She held back. No advice, no push one way or the other, no pressure. She expressed complete confidence that I would make the best decision for me, for my life, and for my family. Nothing from her but authentic support on something she cared so deeply about. That was her way as a parent, and as many of you know, aspects of that style extended beyond her parenting. So what has been so rewarding for us over these past couple years has been seeing how the threads of Karen's way with people and her approach to life wove consistently through all her many roles. It has been a blessing to learn more about how she positively affected others. To all of you who are her friends, her neighbors, and her colleagues, I thank you. I'm truly grateful for the fun, the joy, and the meaning that all of you contributed to her and her life. So much more important than her accomplishments, today we're here to celebrate the quality of her relationships. Thank you.
Scene 3 of Karen's story. This is the one about politics and public service. Oh, you all know that Karen was the first woman mayor of this city. But she was more than that. She was a woman who governed rather than found joy in the politics. She worked on making a difference in people's lives and doing things in relationship with others where she would grab you by the hand and say, "Join me in this task." Oh, that was Karen, all right. Karen took initiative. She took risks. She put herself forward when necessary, and to show up each day with a sense of purpose at work to do something that helped achieve that larger vision. Karen, when she hit the campaign trail, did more than just knock on doors. She listened. She took the opportunity to share a vision and to wait for response in that gentle Karen way. The last time I saw Karen in public, she was being honored by the Schenectady County Legislature, where she happened to have been serving as a legislator. And the name of the main branch of the library, which she was so dedicated and caring of, got to be named after her. She mumbled to me, saying, my name overlooks City Hall for eternity. So Mayor McCarthy, good luck to you, because you always have Karen watching over your shoulder. In truth, that's part of what we are all about. Karen is going to be looking over our shoulders. We pick up the mantle of governing, of leading, of commitment to public life. So let's turn to Karen's entry into politics and this exciting chapter as an elected official.
Karen first entered public life as an advocate for public schools, then ran for and was elected to the City Council in 1975. By 1983, she'd been elected president of the City Council, and later that year, she launched her bid to become mayor. Her upset victory as the first elected Democratic mayor in Schenectady in more than 20 years was also a milestone for women in the capital region. Karen was the first woman elected mayor in the region and throughout upstate New York. Karen got involved in politics to make a difference in her community and for its residents. She focused on making connections, listening to her constituents, and doing what's right. She wanted to improve governance and rarely let politics get in the way of helping people. Her favorite part of campaigning was simply meeting and listening to people, making meaningful connections, find out the best ways to lift up everyone.
Our campaigns were sort of sporting events, really. We didn't have a lot of money to run a big, expensive campaign, so we campaigned door to door. And what we did to try and make that efficient was all four of us would be on the same street at the same time. And we'd have a banner in the street, we'd have noise off speakers, and we had literature. And Karen was a great campaigner. We used to call her Banzai. So what we would do, we had people who went out in front of us who got people on the porches, so we didn't have to use our time that way. So if we saw somebody on a porch, one of the candidates would go there representing all four. Usually Karen would join us. Banzai! She'd come up on the porch and she just loved it. It was a great experience and it was fun. We went to every street in the city of Schenectady. Took us 6 months.
Just as the bulldozer is a symbol, so too are these vacant buildings. Their emptiness symbolizes the empty promises and policies of the present council majority and their failure to provide any direction to downtown redevelopment. These empty storefronts and vacant lots speak for themselves. They represent thousands of dollars of potential tax revenue no longer available to city and county government. Who would ever bring a visitor to our downtown in these days?
As a leader, Karen's style was about teamwork and community building. She focused on solving problems and making necessary but tough decisions. She tackled difficult issues in Schenectady, including GE downsizing, tax base erosion, stabilizing, and then rebuilding downtown Schenectady, investing in infrastructure and improving the lives of all residents, especially youth, elders, and other vulnerable community groups. After her tenure in city government, she went on to serve on the Schenectady County Legislature, where she continued to advocate for the people of her community.
It didn't make any difference what station of life they were, how wealthy they were or not, and what age they were. She just had this wonderful way of talking to people.
She's actually a very entertaining woman, eloquent. She's humble. She actually didn't come off as someone who was, mighty and powerful, but she came off as someone who was willing to help and assist and to guide me through the process and being there on the legislature.
The first time that Karen impacted me and my community was when I was a teenager, when she was the mayor of Schenectady. My friends and I would go to Central Park every day during the summertime. And we were teenagers, so we were fishing, and the park at that time was a mess. One of Karen's major initiatives at that time was to clean the park. And it was really our first civics lesson as teenagers as to how politicians and a community can come together and really help everyone in the community, including us. When I met her years later, I told her that story, and she laughed. She said, "That's what we're supposed to do."
I feel fortunate to have had known her, learned from her, and able to carry on the tradition of strong leadership within the city of Schenectady.
Karen was the first woman on the city council. I was the second. And I've also just recently been appointed to her legislative seat on the county legislature. In many ways, for me, she was a role model. But I also really valued her commitment to the community.
My best memory of Karen is her ability to get people who disagree to come together and agree and support things. She had a tremendous gift. She could get people to come together around controversy and agree to move forward. And then she would say, "Look what you did. Look what you did. Not look what I did." It was always about the people.
We served on the Schenectady County Legislature together, and I recall being a freshman legislator. Back in the early days, one of the younger members of the legislature at the time, and she fought for me to be able to chair a committee because it was a committee of interest to me with regard to tourism and parks. And she was up against some pretty stiff competition. Her party was surrounding her and encouraging that all of the chairs be from one side of the aisle and not the other. And Karen made a case for me, and I will never forget that. She and I had a conversation afterward, and she said it's really about ensuring that we have leadership that's passionate, that cares about getting the job done. And she said, you get things done.
I really do a lot of the things I do because I enjoy them. I take a great deal of meaning from them, and it makes my life richer.
Good afternoon. We are Don and Kay Ackerman, and we are so honored that we have been asked to speak today about our dear friend and colleague, Karen Johnson. We began working with Karen in political life as part of that first campaign in 1975, the Dave, Karen, Howard, and Joe campaign. We worked on other campaigns together and served with her throughout her time as mayor. I think the last time I was on this stage was at the swearing in of her being mayor. We worked together through the Democratic Party over the next 3 decades, and she and Don served together on the county legislature. For most of you who knew Karen well, you know that no video or celebration could capture the lifetime of fun and feelings of forward progress we have experienced working together with and around Karen in this community. Was she a trailblazer for women in politics and public life? Certainly. Did she have successes and failures and have to tackle some problems where no good solutions existed? She did. And she never ever shied away from taking on the tough issues. But throughout her career, she applied her listening, her intelligence, her respect for people and process, and she always kept her eyes on the prize. The prize was doing the best she possibly could for all the constituents in the community.
It wasn't just that Karen was a great listener. She cared about what people were saying. She'd meet somebody on the campaign trail or at an event or in City Hall, and she cared what they had to say. She didn't have to agree with them, but she knew they had a valuable opinion. Throughout her career, particularly in the county legislature where I worked with her, you could see that she had a remarkable gift to bring people together and to keep them on track. There would be a discussion about an issue. People would be going off in different directions, and then Karen would bring it back together. She had an amazing ability to sum up the discussion and find the common ground, and then say, this is where we are, and this is where we should be going. And everyone would just say, yeah, she's right again. Karen's leadership skills made her a role model for the other people she worked with. She set a high standard for her political and campaign colleagues, but by raising that bar, she raised us all up. She built deep and lasting relationships with people. She was a politician. She was a mayor. She was a legislator. She was strong, relentless, and sometimes even fierce in those roles. But those roles did not define her. In each of those roles, in all of our relationships, she was a public servant, a communicator and connector, someone who did her homework and showed up, was always calm, and was a problem solver.
Whatever the role, whatever the label, whether through large visions or small tasks, she made our community better by working at it and working at it together with others. She was our friend, and we celebrate her contributions through her years in elected public office. We will miss her dearly, But just looking at her legacy in this community reminds us of the unbelievable relationship we shared.
Got to share one of my favorite Karen stories. It was right around the time we moved to town. I had hair. It was dark. Karen was on a horse in the stockade. It was around Christmas time, and she was dressed as a shepherd of sorts. And we made eye contact, and she beamed, and she said that line that rabbis very rarely hear. Merry Christmas, Rabbi. And then there was a blink, a wink from the eye, and a smile. Yes, Karen had a way of showing up at places. And she kind of had that way of being there. It gave it almost like a good housekeeping seal of approval when she was around. She really knew how to applaud the work of others, how to encourage them to make the community better. In fact, in this last week, I must have received 9 phone calls and 3 emails from people who wanted to share stories about who Karen was and what she meant to them in terms of community work. Her dear friend Sonia Rubenstein spoke about spending time working on campaigns and working for the library and working for the schools. Mayor Al Jasinski spoke to me about his commitment and how much he respected her work as it came before his. I heard from veterans groups. I heard from librarians, people who said Karen touched their lives. But you know, Karen also served as a role model, not in terms of encouraging us to do work, but modeling what she expected. Did you know that after 2 terms as mayor, she took a hiatus from elected life? She earned a master's in urban planning from RPI, and then she reemerged, rededicated herself to this place, Proctors, and she took on more projects and causes than we can ever catalog. So in the next segment, let's hear about some of the impact Karen had on this community through organizations, connections, instigation, and philanthropic work. So here is another video.
Karen approached community needs with the same straightforward and team-building approach that she brought to politics. She saw a problem or a need and solved it by building coalitions. She nurtured others to step up their own contributions. Her mark was made throughout the city in organizations and programs such as the Public Library, Proctors Theater, the Community Gardens, Jazz on Jay, Kids Art Fest, and the Stockade Arts Festival.
Karen had this ability to be there, and she didn't need the spotlight on her. She needed you to be there to share the work and the vision and the responsibility to making it accomplished.
She supported my efforts with Music Haven and the park, not just financially, but spiritually, because as she said, the job was getting done.
And while she was always advocating for us, one of the people she turned on to our organization is one of our largest supporters now, after years and years. And they never would have come to us if it wasn't for Karen.
She ran a major campaign for the expansion of Proctors. So she was really the fundraising muscle behind the expanded stage that brought us big Broadway shows.
The amount of service that Karen gave the city and the county in all of her capacities, and not just in her political capacity, her human capacity, her individual capacity, her compassion for people, and the desire to have everybody's life made a little bit better, continued way beyond politics.
I don't think there was ever a challenge she met. I don't think there was ever a charity that needed help that Karen wasn't willing to step up and find a way. Leading by that example, I think, can make our community as strong as it possibly can be.
Education was one of her priority issues. She supported the schools, boys and girls clubs, and many other organizations and events focused on children and the arts.
We shared a commitment to public education and the arts, so we were kindred spirits that way, and that relationship deepened after she led a group of concerned citizens putting together the very first Kids Arts Festival in 1994.
Her idea was to think of a way to bring families into downtown Schenectady to experience and appreciate and enjoy the arts.
She was very involved in the community. Jazz on Jay and Kids Arts Festival, they were very important to her. You don't necessarily have to run for office. There are lots of ways to contribute to your community, and she seemed to do it all.
To strengthen the community, she created a scholarship fund at Schenectady County Community College for city residents who faced financial obstacles to getting their college degree.
Karen established this scholarship because she really cares about this community. Regardless of race, creed, or where our students come from. She knows that a good percentage of our students have obstacles. They have dreams, they have aspirations. And so the impetus for us creating this scholarship was to really lift all boats, to help students who have aspirations, who have dreams, who have the tenacity, the grit to dream, but they have this financial burden.
I would really thank her from the bottom of my heart and just let her know that it really was a generous gift that she had gave to me that I could pursue my education.
Karen worked because she loved it, and I don't think it was really work. I think it was just the love of the community, of the people residing in it. Her goals were to make things better for people, to help them, and she did.
Karen started a program with a half dozen other people to solicit instruments that were sitting in attics. They got music stores to repair them, put them in nice cases, and to hand them to a poor kid and say, yeah, you want a clarinet? We got a clarinet. You want a violin? Here's a violin. You want a cello? Here's a cello. And that was an annual effort that goes on even today, but Karen was at the beginning of it.
Karen gave of herself financially, intellectually, and through her hard work. When she turned her attention to an issue or an organization, she gave of herself fully. She led by her own example and took such joy in positive progress across this community.
She's been very generous. She believed that personal contributions of wealth were important, and for those of us in the community who can contribute $10 or $100 or $100,000, all of that together will honor Karen's commitment to our community as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Carmel Patrick, and I'm honored to be here in my capacity as president of the Schenectady County Library Board of Trustees to celebrate Karen Johnson's commitment to community. I'm a huge reader, and I have been since I was 4 years old when my mom first brought me to the children's room of the Watertown Public Library. As a kid, I read Highlights magazine religiously, trying my best to emulate Gallant more often than Goofus, and agonizing over finding all the images buried deep within hidden pictures. I knew Karen for several years before I discovered her connection to Highlights. From that moment on, Karen Johnson's stature rose to that of rock star. Forget about being the former mayor or any of her other stellar accomplishments. From then on, I was confident that if I played my cards right, Karen might just give me all the answers to hidden pictures. The Highlights motto, "Fun with a Purpose," perfectly describes Karen's passion for designing community events, as well as her support of organizations for children and families that emphasize art, music, theater, education, and literacy. And for her, the connective tissue between all of her efforts was a holistic view about community. As Betsy Sandberg, Karen's friend and her successor in coordinating Kids Art Fest and Jazz on Jay, noted, regardless of her focus, education, the arts, city and county governance, healthcare, or business, Karen was most passionate about bringing people together for the common purpose of creating innovative solutions to community challenges. That's why, when we look at all of Karen's achievements, you can almost read a playbook of the things it takes to make a healthy, thriving community that everyone would want to be a part of. Good schools, attractive parks, art and music experiences for kids and adults, quality government services, mentoring of others, a culture of giving back, a community fabric oriented to thinking big, to solving problems, to creating a shared vision and making that vision a reality. As Karen often said to Betsy, if you are doing it alone, you are doing it wrong. Another important Karen, Karen Bradley, director of the Schenectady County Public Library, pointed out that for many of us gathered here today, Karen Johnson was our role model. She said that Karen inspired women and young people to achieve great things and to be anything they wanted. They could raise a family, they could work and volunteer, they could devote themselves to community causes and truly make the world a better place. Now, what did I learn from Karen Johnson? Well, everyone knows how I love to talk. And without her ever realizing it, the most important thing I learned from Karen was to sit back and listen, to especially listen to those with whom we disagree, to remain open to what people have to say, and then talk. Oh, and to be brief about it, which I will remember to do with this. If Karen were here, she would credit others for nearly everything we have described. It was a team effort, she'd say. Look at what all you did. And when I look out at all of you, I'd say that Karen was right. As Eric mentioned earlier, so many of you have done so much for this community. The credit and appreciation should be distributed, spread far and wide. But today, we celebrate Karen for being a convener and an initiator, for getting her hands dirty, for showing up to do the work, and for providing an example for each of us, for all of us. Thank you. I just have to add that I hope you will join Karen's legislative colleagues, as well as the staff and trustees of the Schenectady County Public Library, tomorrow at 11 a.m. as we officially dedicate the Central Library as the Honorable Karen B. Johnson Public Library.
Matt and I were not here during the darkest days of Schenectady, and you heard from Karen's own enunciation the clarity she had about what those dark days were. One of the amazing things about how she operated, which was the title of my section now, was that she absolutely was honest about what she saw and what she heard. There was no bullshit about all that. So when you go outside now and see what State Street is versus what it was 25 years ago, when, as Ray Gillen likes to say, there were two failed dollar stores, pretty amazing. When you look at it, you have to go, someone was part of inspiring all this. And there's a project happening that was instigated by Mona and Neil Golub and involves my friend Bill Patrick. And it's a project that's looking at, historically and kind of emotionally, the revitalization of Schenectady. And because of Bill's involvement, I've been kind of forced to look at things that I haven't looked at, that are in files. And if you knew Karen, she had files everywhere. As she left work with us, we've consolidated them and we started to look, and even this morning, Bill made me look at some things that I hadn't considered. The number of reports, the number of documents, the number of analyses that ended up in Karen's hands, either as mayor or as legislator or as development director at Proctors, were kind of remarkable. Her nose was in the middle of all of them. And I'm looking at this after Bill left this morning going, this is alone 25 years of the effort reflected on our street today. Wouldn't have been possible without this instigating, honest, not trying to take it all over because she knew she couldn't do it alone person. So, my section is, how did she operate? She had discretion. She had discretion to the wall, to the hilt. Both boys have talked about it a little bit. It was not about telling you what to do. So I had this little magic place with her that I had actually sort of forgotten, but it happened regularly. If you've not been in our offices, they're cubes, typical 6.5 foot by 6.5 foot cubes. We call it Cube Land. In Karen's cube, I could walk in, sit on a little stool she had, and invoke the cone of silence. And she knew, and I knew, she knew from how I would walk in that I was invoking the cone of silence, and I knew that she would only tell me what she was going to tell me. But a typical question would be, what's going on here really, Karen? And a typical answer would be, well, it all started back here. That led to this, that led to this, that led to that. So if you want to talk to someone that might make a difference, here's who I recommend. And then I would lift the cone of silence and say thank you. And I credit her for helping lead us intensely by that magical discretion that she implemented all the time. And with that, our last video for the night, for the day.
No matter where she was, on the campaign trail, in the legislature, in the mayor's office, contributing to her extended family stewardship of highlights, working to improve her community, the common threads of Karen's approach were always evident: caring, listening, focusing on solutions. Karen's approach, Karen's way, was simple: treat people well. Never compromise your ideals. Show up and do the work. Take care of your family and your community.
She knew it was all complicated. You know, so many people want the world to be black or white, yes or no, and Karen understood that it's all grays, and you have to live and understand that.
She was always willing to speak to folks, to hear their concerns, to hear their story, which comes to what Karen really was, and very personable and very interested in someone's story and how she may be able to help.
She believed it was more important to listen to folks you disagreed with than those that always agree with you, and you learn more from that process. And we listened to the stakeholders, we listened to our residents. I think if anything, that was a true testament to the character of Karen Johnson.
The way she was able to give feedback and help shape some of the strategies that we pursued was invaluable, and she always did it in a very kind of unassuming way. She had this way of making everyone feel included around the table, I think both from the board's perspective as well as from management's perspective, and for feeling like you were heard.
I just adored being in meetings with her because she would really listen and she wouldn't talk too much.
Karen tried to solve problems, and I was in many meetings where she was very transparent. She encouraged discussion amongst the people in the room, and she had an elegant way of drawing a discussion to an end and then having a vote.
She had this interesting way of folding like 50 letters at one time, as opposed to one at a time. So she was always looking for efficiencies.
Karen was an activist. She was well-spoken. She was kind. She was patient.
Just someone who makes you feel better and does so in a very genuine way and cares about her.
If everyone that came in contact with her tried to take one element of her and incorporate it in their life, we would have a great community. We would have a much better world.
Watching what she's done over her last 40 years is a role model. Only good things that can happen by getting involved in your community.
I think Karen set a wonderful example for women in particular. She was strong. She knew her stuff. She was prepared always and confident, but not arrogant. There really, truly was a quiet humbleness about her. But make no mistake, she also exuded authority.
Reflecting on Karen and what she's done, it's a lot of just showing up every day and doing that work.
Seeing her name on the library is a reminder to us of everything that she did and how she did it. It helps inspire people to try to emulate her participation and involvement in government and in the community.
I think Karen has created a path for each of us to follow. She clearly showed us that giving of her time led to better public policy in our community, led to improving the lives of many people who can't speak for themselves. And each one of us can do that in our own way.
I have to walk by her door every day, and every day I start my day going, oh, Karen's gone. But then as I get to my door, I look back and I go, yes, but then I start to think about the funny times we shared going out to dinner and having fun together, me knocking on that door. I said, I got too many happy memories that I can't dwell on the sadness. I just have to remember her personality and the love she had for all of us.
If Karen were here, she would be uncomfortable with all this talk about her legacy. She would rightly give credit to so many others. She would remind us that everything good and important is achieved together. She would point out that any celebration of her life must also be a celebration of the progress and success of Schenectady. She would find a way to inspire us toward more action, more contribution, more collaboration, more listening, more solving problems to make people's lives better, more service to the community. You would walk away motivated and optimistic about what we can do working together. That's the Karen Johnson legacy. That's why we celebrate her today.
Good afternoon. I'm Denise Gonick, former CEO at MVP Healthcare. Karen Johnson was a great and powerful woman. It is a well-intended compliment to her character that she would likely not have wanted me to say so, yet I feel compelled to. Perhaps because female power and our perception of it remains this uniquely mysterious and contradictory-filled topic in our business, community, and political lives. I'm reminded of another great and powerful woman we lost this summer, Toni Morrison. She once said to her students, "When you get these jobs that you've been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." This is not just a grab bag candy game. Well, if anyone understood what their real job was, it was Karen. Let me share with you some of the ways that she both influenced me and, more importantly, helped to make MVP Healthcare a better company in this business community. Karen Johnson joined the board of MVP in 1997. I became general counsel there a year later and worked with the board extensively and got to know her in that way. I remember her being somewhat quiet, but always clearly and carefully listening. And listening was critical because the business of healthcare is big and complicated and personal and very hard to change. But Karen understood big, complicated, personal, and hard to change things. She was undaunted by the shades of gray inherent in healthcare. She understood the critical importance of having each stakeholder be heard: members, physicians, employees, other directors, business leaders, community leaders. 10 years after she joined the board, she was chosen by her fellow directors to become vice chair. And this was after an acquisition that strengthened the company in its geographic reach and capabilities, but also at a time when the board was becoming smaller. She assumed that role of vice chair in 2008 and held it for 5 years. And it was during the summer of 2012 that MVP's then first and only president and CEO announced his retirement. Ultimately, the board turned to Karen to place their confidence in leading the search for his successor. I became MVP's second president and CEO at the end of that summer, and at the same time, Karen was elected chair of the board. She was everything you could have asked for in a leader. It was a time of great change, and she understood what was at stake. And yet, she continually encouraged me to explore opportunities, to make changes, and to not be afraid to make mistakes. Her support was evident in words, in actions, and in just being there and listening. The relationships that she helped me forge helped enable MVP's second major acquisition and brought more growth, diversification, and strength to this Schenectady-based company. At the same time, MVP became more connected to its community roots than perhaps at any other time in its history since its inception. She inherently knew what it meant to lead a mission-driven organization, and she never tired of the continual work that was required to bring that mission to a fruition. So when I say that Karen was a powerful woman, what I mean is that she was a powerful woman leader. To me, she exemplified the art of how to wield power for good, an art that we would all be well served to see more people of both genders practicing. Her trailblazing is about more than being a first. Her trailblazing was also about being fiercely talented, a facilitative leader, of being someone who balanced authentic humility with a drive to achieve results, and being a person who combined strategic political skill with an unwavering focus on achieving goals for the good of an entire community. This is what we got with a powerful woman who was in the room where it happened. Today, we celebrate the fact that she focused her leadership and energy on such a broad array of issues that benefited so many people. She used her power to empower others, for sure, and she lived a deeply meaningful life in the process. We are blessed to have known her and can honor her memory by following the example that she set. Thank you.
So where do we go from here? First of all, words of thanks to Eric and Kent for sharing their mother with us in this community and for so many lives that she has touched. So thank you. And to all of you for carving out time in your busy lives today, and also for sharing the journey with her that made this community stronger and better. And to our friends at the Pierce Communication for organizing and doing work, thank you so very much. Where do we go from here? Well, we got to eat, so I am...
Key Hall, I think it's called.
Right, we're going to go next door in Key Hall.
And you're all invited.
To share a meal. Now, we were trying to figure out a classy way to say farewell, and we realized that we've talked about Karen's legacy, and as you heard Denise say, that Karen would be a little shy and say, you got to share the legacy with her. So I'm going to ask you to rise when you hear the category in which you fall in. So if you were an elected official that had a chance to govern with Karen, let me ask you to please rise. If you have sat on a committee with Karen, let me ask you to please rise. If you ever disagreed with Karen, but respected her enough to work side by side with Karen, please rise.
If you ever were solicited by Karen to give to something in this community, please rise.
If you ever sat on a committee and was empowered to do a really good job because Karen was watching over you, please rise. If you ever been empowered to join in because Karen served as your role model, please rise. If you ever loved Karen and respected her sage advice and counsel, please rise. If you saw Karen as a friend, a role model, a leader in the community whose legacy you are proud to own, please rise.
And we are delighted to not have an organ recessional of the traditional sort, but of the bombastic theatrical sort that she helped make happen. Goldie and Carl Hackett, please send us out.